All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going on a pretty incredible expedition. We're heading into the most complex, most mysterious object in the known universe, and it's the one that's sitting right between your own ears. Yep, we're talking about the human brain. So, to get started, just try to wrap your head around this number: 86 billion. That's the best estimate we have for the number of neurons, brain cells, that are packed into your skull. Every single one of them is a tiny little computer, a spark of potential. Calling it a universe isn't really an exaggeration. To squeeze all that computing power into such a small space, the brain performs this incredible trick. The outer layer, the cerebral cortex, is folded up into all those wrinkles, creating a massive surface area. It's a private cosmos of connections that powers every single thought, every feeling, every action you've ever had. And that right there is the grand challenge, isn't it? For all of neuroscience. When you're faced with something so immensely complex, where do you even start? Well, you start by building the right tools. You create maps to help you navigate this inner world. And that's exactly what we're going to explore today. Okay, so our first set of tools gives us what you could call a satellite view. For the first time ever, they let us peer right through the skull and see the brain's landscape in a living, breathing person. The cornerstone here is the MRI. It uses this ridiculously powerful magnet to get all the tiny hydrogen atoms in your brain's water molecules to line up. Then it pings them with radio waves and listens to the echo they send back. From that echo, it builds this breathtakingly detailed 3D map of your brain's anatomy. It's just incredible. And what a map it is. This MRI satellite can see the tough, protective layers that wrap around the brain, the fluid-filled chambers that cushion it from bumps, and of course, that famous wrinkly cortex. But maybe most importantly, it lets us clearly see the difference between the gray matter, which is kind of like the brain's little computing centers, and the white matter, which is all the wiring that connects everything together. So, think of a regular MRI as a perfect, high-resolution street map. It's beautiful, it's detailed, but it's static. What if you want to know where the traffic is flowing right now? For that, you need functional MRI, or fMRI. It works by tracking changes in blood oxygen. See, when a part of the brain gets busy, it calls for more oxygen-rich blood. So fMRI is less like a map and more like a real-time traffic report for your brain. So we can see the structures, and we can see the activity hotspots. But how is information getting from point A to point B? The next set of tools lets us actually trace the brain's vast network of information superhighways. This amazing technique is called diffusion tensor imaging, or DTI. It's a really clever use of that same MRI machine, but this time, instead of taking a static picture, it's basically acting like a Google Maps for our neural pathways, showing us the actual routes that information travels along. And the principle behind it is actually kind of simple and totally brilliant. Imagine a handful of straws. Water is going to flow down the length of those straws way more easily than it'll flow sideways through them, right? Well, the brain's wiring, the axons, are just like those straws. DTI just tracks the direction that water moves most easily, and by doing that, it perfectly reveals the path of the brain's wiring. And using DTI, we can see these massive fiber bundles in stunning detail. We can visualize the corpus callosum, that huge bridge connecting the left and right halves of your brain, and we can map out all the other major highways that let different regions, the parts responsible for logic, emotion, movement, all talk to each other in an instant. Now, mapping the structure and the wiring is awesome, but those are relatively slow processes. The brain itself operates at the speed of thought. And its language, its currency is electricity. So our next tools let us eavesdrop on these lightning-fast electrical conversations. And that brings us to EEG. You've probably seen it. It's that cap with all the electrodes on it. By placing that on someone's scalp, we can literally listen in to the collective hum of millions and millions of neurons firing in sync. Now, it's not great at telling you exactly where the conversation is happening, but it is phenomenal at telling you when it's happening, down to the millisecond. So how on earth can we hear that chatter from outside the skull? Well, it's all about teamwork. When a huge population of neurons all fire at the same time, their tiny individual electrical fields all add up. They combine to create a signal that's just barely strong enough to pass through bone and be picked up by those sensitive electrodes, giving us a direct, real-time window into the brain's rhythms.
All right, so up to this point, we've basically been passive observers. We've been mapping and listening. But this next leap is truly profound. We're moving from just watching the brain to actively and safely interacting with it, literally flipping its switches to figure out what they do.
Enter transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS. This is just a fascinating piece of physics. You hold a special coil over someone's head, and it lets out a powerful but brief magnetic pulse. That pulse creates a tiny, very precise electrical current in the brain tissue right underneath it. And that current lets scientists temporarily turn a small patch of brain cells on or off, just like a light switch. And this is what makes TMS a total game changer. As this quote gets at, it lets scientists create a virtual patient. Think about it. If you want to know what a specific part of the brain does for, say, speech, you no longer have to wait for a patient to have an unfortunate brain injury in that exact spot. You can use TMS to safely and temporarily disrupt that area in a healthy person, see what happens, and establish a real cause and effect link. Okay, so if TMS was a revolutionary, our next tool is straight out of science fiction. Seriously. It's called optogenetics, and it gives researchers the most precise control over the brain imaginable. By using some clever genetic engineering, scientists can make specific types of neurons sensitive to light. It literally lets them control brain cells with a laser beam. The way it works is just ingenious. It basically comes down to a go signal and a stop signal. Researchers can use a harmless virus to insert a gene for a protein called channel rhodopsin into certain neurons. When you shine a blue light on those neurons, they fire. They're activated. Then you can use a different gene for a protein called halorhodopsin, and when you shine a yellow light on those cells, they're inhibited. They stop firing. The precision here is just breathtaking. So let's do a quick recap of this amazing Explorer's Toolkit we've just looked at. With an MRI, we can see the brain's physical structure. With DTI, we can trace its intricate wiring. With EEG, we can listen to its high-speed electrical chatter. And with TMS and optogenetics, we can actually reach in and flip its switches to understand exactly what they do. Every single one of these tools is like a new lens, giving us a new way to see ourselves. We're creating maps of consciousness, of memory, of emotion that are more detailed than anyone ever thought possible. And that just leaves us with one last huge, fascinating question. As these maps get even better and these tools get even more precise, what new frontiers, what essential truths about who we are we going to uncover next?